Hi, I'm Dr. Matthew Anderson, and today's conversation is called Marriage, Miracle, or Misery, or Miracle and Misery, as it often is. Why it's so hard so often, and how it can be so worth it. Most people who get married or are in what I call committed love relationships, those are the people who live together and are in a committed relationship but haven't done the legal part of getting married. My opinion is if you're in one of those kind of relationships, you're married. You're married either way. You just don't have a certificate or license for it. But it evokes the same kinds of issues whether you signed the document or not. So that's who this applies to. And it can be miraculous or it can be miserable. And as you know, lots of people experience that kind of committed love relationship, marriage, or living together as particularly difficult. And I want to talk a little bit today about why it's so hard in a way that hopefully will help you frame it, put it in a context that helps you understand maybe what you've been through or going through now in a way that will be helpful to you. And I want to pose to you the incredible possibilities that exist now for that kind of relationship, the marriage relationship, that in a real sense have never existed before in human history in terms of the general population. Never. Now, I'm sure there's some exceptions to that. But in terms of general population, what we have available to us now in terms of committed love relationship or marriage has never really existed. Now, here's why. Marriage up until, say, the last 75 years, since the Second World War, that's a kind of a guesstimation. Maybe it's a little bit different from that, but things really shifted in that war. And one of the major reasons in our country, but in many other countries, was that when the young men went to war in this country, a lot of women went to work in order to fill that space. The war lasted long enough and the women were at work long enough, the women began to really experience, hey, there's something here that's really valuable that I want in my life. And when they came back, the men came back from war, the women said, hey, we got to talk about this thing. In addition to that, finally, in this country, amazingly, in 1920, just 100 years ago, women got to vote. Astounding it took that long. But the relationship that we call marriage used to be, up until this point in my lifetime, used to be about gender roles. Males had one role, females had another, and it was male dominated. Men had the upper hand, they had the power. For many, many centuries, even millennia, women were considered property, not human beings with full human rights. And so that has now changed. The paradigm, the context, the shape of what marriage used to be about has now changed, and we're in a massive shift about that. And it's one of the reasons that it's so difficult is because in our culture, any culture, no one has been fully prepared for what that requires of each individual now to make it work. And we're still in the process of learning how do you live in that kind of context, that kind of relationship now in a way that really works. Now, what I'm going to share with you today is some of the reasons for that, what the possibilities are, and then in video number 2, I'm going to share with you what I've discovered in my work over the last 50 years, in my personal life and in my professional life as a couples counselor and coach since 1970. What really works in the new design, in the new paradigm for marriage or intimate love relationships. Now, what it used to be was based on gender roles and male dominated. Now, the way it works, the way it, in a sense, is required to work, is what I've come to call intimate equal partnership. The intimate equal partnership is now what committed love relationship marriage is all about. It used to be, up until my lifetime, marriage was about supporting the status quo of the society, of relationships, of women's roles and men's roles. That's what it was about. Now it has shifted so incredibly. It's obviously a shock, because now close to 50% of people who get married get divorced. Why? Because they can't make it work. And those who stay married are not necessarily that happy. In fact, many of them continue on the misery that is a big part of what they have, or they settle for a mediocre level of sort of relationship. And you can see those relationships all over the place. And that's why a lot of people today, a lot of younger people say, I'm not going to get married. Well, guess what? If you live with somebody in a committed monogamous relationship, you're freaking married. And you call it something else, but that's what you have. And you still will experience the exact same problems that people who actually go through the ceremony and get the license have and will have. So there's no hiding places from it, my friends. If you want a committed, intimate love relationship and where you're living with somebody, this is what you're going to experience, no matter what you call it. So that's the hard facts. So in the past, no change or intimacy was required if you were married. Now, some people had some change and some intimacy, but it was not built in to the institution. What was built in was the roles and these certain expectations. Now, all of that's out the window. In the present paradigm, what's required is change and grow or die, meaning fail. Change and grow is required for the intimate, equal partnerships. And it poses the new paradigm that is here, whether we like it or not. That's what showed up, brothers and sisters. What showed up now is intimate, equal partnerships about what marriage-type relationships are all about. And it poses incredible possibilities, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. And as you already know, immense challenges for two different reasons. One is there's very little training about it. In order to be married now, legally married, you have to get less training than if you want to get a driver's license. The driver's license requires more preparation, study, and training than it does if you want to get married and you're, I don't know, in this state it's probably 18. I'm in Florida, but it could be 21. Anyway, that's all you need. And you're two agreeable people who sign the paper, that's it. You can get married tomorrow. That's not true about a driver's license. You have to do a little bit of practice. Now, if you've been on our roads, you think, well, maybe they didn't have enough training either. But the reason, what I'm saying to you is, there's not enough training. And usually what happens is people get married, think they're going to be fine with it, or shocked about how difficult it is for them. They get divorced, or sometimes they come to see people like me, and they have to go through a process of learning how to make it work. They walk into this. I sometimes say to people, look, what happens if you got on an airplane in Miami and you're going to fly to New York? The airplane takes off, and about 20 minutes into the flight, the pilots walk past you and jump out the airplane and parachute down, and you're left up there, and you're supposed to fly it yourself. Would you ever get on an airplane if you thought that was going to happen? No, you would not. But that's we get into marriage in the same way. We jump into something assuming, it's cool, I'm going to know what to do. Everybody else is that. No, they don't know what they're doing. And either they fail and crash, get divorced, break up, stop living together, or they live together and they're pretty miserable a lot of the time because they don't know what the hell they're doing. Nobody taught them. Nobody prepared them. Nobody said, hey, look, these are the skills that you absolutely need to have in order to make this intimate, equal partnership that you call marriage or an intimate love relationship work. Who told you? In a sense, you're not to blame for the difficulties you're having. So, and the other thing they don't tell you is something, if you go to a decent couples counselor, meaning one who really understands the kind of things I'm going to tell you, is your issues, the deep issues that you have never healed or never grown up into, might not show up very much in other areas of your life, but when you get into a deeply emotional, loving relationship with another person and you're living with them 24/7, they come to the surface. They come to the surface and you cannot avoid them. And you say, what in the world is going on here? And you don't know what to do. It has painful effects on you and on your partner, and if you have children, even on them. And so then you end up talking to somebody like me if you can afford it. And a lot of people can't, and so they suffer. Or sometimes they will go to professionals who are still caught in the old paradigm, and it makes it even more difficult. So before I'm going to talk about the challenges a little bit more, I want to talk about some possibilities, because what makes it so worth it is that the intimate equal partnership brings possibilities to us as normal everyday people that have never been available to us in intimate relationship before. One of the major reasons that it occurs that way is that we are now exploring intimate, loving relationships between equal partners. Women now are moving into equality with men on so many levels that now true intimacy, and I mean this very honestly and with lots and lots of experience, true intimacy, emotional intimacy, intellectual intimacy, and even physical intimacy is now possible. Real intimacy only exists in possibility between equals. If one person has more power than the other, real intimacy, you can have some level of love and closeness, but real deep intimacy is not possible because one person has more power than the other. One person is over the other. And typically, in the way we've all been raised over the past 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, how many thousands of years, is that men were superior to women in that way. And often they had more financial power, voting power, control. Well, you can't truly be intimate in that because you need trust. You need to be able to open your heart and be vulnerable. And if someone can control your life in ways you cannot control your own life, you're not going to open fully to them. And if I can control you, something in me says I can't open fully to you either. So a new thing has happened. A new paradigm for relationship has opened up for our life together. And now we can have what I like to call radical intimacy, a kind of opening of the heart with our partner, with our mutual partner. If I love you and you love me, we can open to each other at levels that really isn't possible with any other person on the entire planet. And amazing things can happen out of that. Inner healing can occur. In some sense, when it's really working, it's better than the best therapy you could ever imagine that you could ever purchase from any professional that exists. because it touches the deepest, most hidden parts of us in that radical sense. It can cause inner healing. It can help us become the best that we ever imagined that we could possibly be. You see, when you fall in love with someone and they fall in love with you, there's that mutual experience. We come to experience what's really immensely wonderful about our partner. It's an incredible insight into who they are. I call it the eyes of love. We can see that. And it's very real what we see in that person. And they see in us. And that's why we fall in love with that person. That our experience with them reveals to us who we really are and can be, and the same about them. And if we know how to manage that, how to handle it in a sense of sacred preciousness, it becomes real. We live into it. That's possible now in ways it never was. It has an amazing effect, long term, on your ability to be romantically connected to each other, emotionally, but also physically. It can produce the most unbelievable lovemaking that one-night stands or friends with benefits or lack of commitment or love is not fully present don't even come close to appreciating or knowing about. It's freaking incredible. And it can last for year after year after year and get better and better and better and better. It's the best thing that there is in terms of potential, what can happen in human relationship. It's the absolute best. Sad thing is, it can also produce the absolute worst of human beings if we don't know how to manage it, if we really don't appreciate what it requires. It can be a horror. You all know that part. I don't have to tell you how bad it can be. I'm here to tell you how fantastic it can be if you begin to understand the paradigm that you have entered into. So the challenges, which I'm going to talk about very quickly, the intimate, equal partnership that marriage and committed, loving relationship now, the first challenge is it requires adults. It's an adult-only landscape. Children can't do it, and adolescents can't do it. And what I'm saying to you is, a lot of people don't get to be adults in this life. They don't grow into that. But that's what this kind of relationship absolutely requires. It requires real adults. If you get childish with each other, if you act like teenagers with each other, you're going to suffer. You know that already. Immaturity of any kind does not belong in a deeply intimate, loving relationship. It will cause problems day after day after day after day. One of the ways you know you're immature in a relationship, and this is going to hit most of us, what I'm going to say now, one of the ways you know that you are immature and on the wrong path is if you think that your partner is the one with the problems and it's not your problem. That's like one of the biggest flags you can have. I'm going to talk more in my next video about how to deal with that, but that's a really big problem. And it's a sign of immaturity, of immature vision. I'm blaming you. I don't have responsibility, because adults know, and in this kind of relationship between two adults, we know as partners, we both share, get this part, equally in the creation of our problems. Therefore, we both share equally in the creation of our loving, successful, healthy relationship. And when you get that realization, you are now on the road to progress. We also need self-awareness. We need to know a lot about ourselves. We need to be able to take self-responsibility, which is part of what I just said. We have to be able to be open-hearted and have a certain level of vulnerability in our relationship. It's required for meaningful intimacy. And if you can't do that, you have to work at learning how to open your heart and be vulnerable and give and receive love. it also requires full commitment, not half-assed stuff. And one of the things that happens to people who live together, quote, before they get married, is they're afraid of being fully committed. They call it a kind of a trial. It's being married. It has to do with your issues about commitment, and it's worth looking at. And finally, as you might have noticed in all the things I said up to now, in order for an intimate, equal partnership to really blossom, both partners have to have all the stuff I named before, and what's implied in that is a willingness to grow and grow. Growth is a regular part of what goes on. You just don't get to a certain place and that's it and forget it. That's called the old paradigm, and it will not work in today's world. So what I'm saying to you is, the reason that marriage and intimate relationships have gotten so difficult is that the paradigm, the forum in which it fits into, the old one has been shattered. It's past. It is out of date. It doesn't work anymore. This new life that we are living on this planet, and it's not going back to the past, my friend. We're not going. We have to learn how to deal in the present. And the present offers us possibilities that are so much better than what they used to be. It's incredible, just if you get a glimpse of it. So there are immense challenges. Yes, they are. And as you work them, you come to discover that you can have a relationship that is so incredible, you feel like, I like to say, you feel like you've won the love lottery. You know, if you make $70,000, $80,000 or less than that today and you buy a ticket tomorrow, you're worth $100 million. It's like that. The love lottery in a healthy, growing, intimate, equal partnership is incredible. Every day it's wonderful. And the level of conflict that you might experience drops to less than 10% for most of the time. And the conflict that you do have, in many cases, actually draws you closer together than what it does in many other marriages that aren't working very well because they don't know what the hell they're doing, is the thing that they have conflict about produces a conflict that is more painful than the thing they had the problem with, and their marriage, their relationship, is damaged by it. Conflict can be a way, if you manage it properly in the kind of relationship I'm talking about, can be a way of even drawing you closer to your partner, and you come out stronger. You imagine that? It's not something to avoid. It's something to say, okay, we're going to have a difference about this. Let's get into it, because we might be better off as a couple as we go through it and come out the other side. So I'm telling you, the possibilities of an intimate, equal partnership are amazing. And I use the right word, miraculous. I would like for you in your relationship to have an opportunity to move into that with your partner. It's the best thing you can give yourself personally. It's the best thing you can give your partner. And if you have children, it is an incredible gift to give to them. This is what is now possible in ways it has never been possible before. So I'm going to do a part 2, which is how do you get there? What do you do about this? And I'll give you at least 7 different things that you can begin to, techniques, attitudes, behaviors, ways of dealing with it that really do work and really can move you forward along this path. And we're in this together. We're all learning. I don't think anybody has got the absolute answers, but the things I'm going to share with you have really worked for me in my relationship and for many of the people that I work with. So God bless you where you are. Thanks for listening to this. I'll see you in step 2.